Welcome. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Everdell with the Spirecrest expansion. So let's get started. And first of all, one thing I want to mention is during each of the seasons, we're all going to be affected by these little cards here that I'm pointing at, called weather cards, during each of the seasons. And this is the winter. This is the winter weather cards. This is the spring weather cards. These are the summer weather cards, and these are the autumn weather cards. And so, as you may know, with Everdell, sometimes a player might be, one player might be in summer, while the other player is still in spring, for instance. And so, if you're still in spring, you'll only be affected by the weather card for spring. If you are in summer, you'll only be affected by the weather card in summer, even though there might still be players being affected by the spring weather card. And so normally, when you start the game, one of these three cards will be drawn, and you'll know which one it is. And let's just say it's this one here, the blizzard. So, during winter, all players in winter will experience this blizzard, which will make things harder to play. One thing about Spirecrest is this expansion makes things more challenging because it makes the seasons, each of the seasons, affect you differently. And there's three different possibilities during each season that will affect you. And some are worse than others, obviously. But it makes winter even harder than normal to do anything in winter. And we'll explain all of the weather cards in the weather card video, because I'll have a video called Everdell Spirecrest Weather Cards. And so we will go over all of the weather cards in that video. But that's the point. It makes it harder when you are playing in winter, spring, summer, and autumn, usually. But the way this expansion works, is nothing will happen here, except for what the weather is doing to you, depending on which season you're in. So if you're in winter, then you're affected by a blizzard. And if you're in spring, you might be affected by a heavy rain. If you're in summer, you might be affected by severe wind. And if you're in autumn, you might be affected by hail. And so that's the only thing that happens during the seasons. However, this is where the expansion comes into play. When you are preparing for the next season, normally when you're preparing for the next season, this tree here tells you what's going to happen. If you're preparing for spring, which you can't really see because the angle is off, obviously. But if you're preparing for spring, you are going to activate all your grain production cards and you're going to get a new worker, right? Well, that's not the only thing that happens when you're preparing for spring. What happens is these rabbit travelers, and everyone's going to get one for their color, whatever animal, critter they happen to choose. And so this is the fox's critter, and this is the lizard's critter. So this is for lizards, and this is for foxes, the rabbit travelers. So let's say the lizards, they're preparing for the next season, and it's spring. What they're going to do is they're going to go on this little journey here, and they're going to take one of these with them. Now, every player is going to start with one of these. This is an expedition map. This is sort of like a map tile. And there we go. Expedition costs. That's what it says on there. So you're going to have this next to your town. Everyone's going to start with one of these tiles here. And then before you prepare for the next season, before you end up in spring, you're going to take one of these tiles of your choice. Each of these tiles are going to give you extra points at the end of the game. So let's say I wanted, let's say I wanted this one here. I would take this one and I would put it right next to the other one. Now, at the end of the game, you're going to have to pay these resources to get these points. So let's just say that's the case. I chose that one for spring. Alright? And then I also get to reveal these cards. These are discovery cards. And so 3 of these will be revealed. Okay? 3 of these will be revealed, and you'll get to choose one. There's also another way you can do it too. We also have, this is usually used for solo mode, but you can put a discovery card here, a discovery card here, and a discovery card here. And if you choose this one, you'll have to pay you'll have to either discard 2 cards or pay 2 resources to choose it, or, 1 card and 1 resource. And this one will be, 1 card or 1 resource, or this one will be nothing. You don't have to pay anything if you take this one here, for instance. But that's an option that you can do, or you can just simply choose, one of the 3 that you would like. Because if you ask me, this should only be for solo, because it gets really hard for all the players anyway with the seasons changing. So I recommend just choosing one of the 3 that you would like to play with, and then the other 3 will go on the bottom of the discovery deck for each of the seasons. So you'll take one, and they do a variety of different things, and we will go over all of them in a couple of different videos. And so some of these, this one here actually gives you a big, ginormous critter. One of these, for instance. You'll get one of these. And there's several of them. And so some of these cards give off these ginormous meeples, and we will go over them in a separate video. And then we'll go over the rest of the discovery cards per season, basically. Whether that be 1 video or 2, who knows. But that's the point. That some of these are awesome to get. And that's what makes playing this expansion so much fun, because you want to discover these cards. You want to get one of these awesome cards because they do so many awesome things, so cool stuff. And so once you start getting some of these discovery cards, the seasons start to pale in comparison to what they do to you. Of course, winter is probably the harshest season of them all, and spring being pretty bad too, but I remember summer and autumn not doing so bad to me in comparison. I guess it also depends on what card was chosen randomly for each of the seasons, because some are worse than others. But they're all pretty bad in winter, if you ask me. They're all really horrible. Make things much more difficult than normal for the winter season. But then you'll go here, and that's where your rabbit traveler will stay until you prepare for summer. And when you prepare for summer, you'll reveal the next weather tile, which is obviously this one here, the summer one. And then you'll take one of these. So let's say I choose this one here. I would put it next to my other one, like that. And then I would reveal the next discovery card, which is this one here, for instance. And then I would, obviously, or should I say I would reveal the next 3 discovery cards, and I would take one for myself to choose and do what it's supposed to do, or keep it depending on what it does. And then I would move my rabbit traveler there. And when I prepare for autumn, then once again, obviously, I would obviously reveal this season card, this weather card for the season, and I would choose one of these 3 to go with it. And let's say I chose this one here and put it next to that. Then I would get one of these 3 discovery cards, and my rabbit traveler, as you can see, he's been going to these little stone tablets, almost looking giant stone tablets here. And there's one there, and there's one here where you start, and there's one here. But there isn't one for when you're in autumn. It just kind of trails off the board. That's because once you make it to autumn, your rabbit traveler will actually go here on that tile instead. And then when the game is over, when you can no longer take any more turns, your action phase is done, there's one last thing to do. And that is, you have to then move your rabbit traveler to this location here. And let's say he was going to this location, which is Cuddler's Cove. He would go there, and if you wanted the 3 points, you'd have to discard 2 cards and a resource of your choice. If he didn't do that, then that would be the end of the rabbit traveler's journey. You wouldn't get the victory points for this, you wouldn't get the victory points for that, and you wouldn't get the victory points for that. But if you were able to pay those, then you would move on to the next tile here, which is Amber Caves. And then you would have the option to pay 3 resin for this one, and if you didn't, then you would only get this 3 victor points here at the end of the game, and that's it. But if you were able to pay it, then once again you move on to the last one, which is Shipwreck Shore. And if you were able to pay 2 twigs and 2 resin for this one, after paying all the other resources on the other ones, then you would have completed your journey. You would have gotten all these extra victor points at the end of the game. So it's very useful keeping some resources at the end of the game when you're playing with Spirecrest, because now there is something you can do with the extra cards you weren't able to use, with the extra resources you weren't able to use. Especially if you didn't have certain cards that said you get extra points for having resin and pebbles in your town, etc., etc. So this is definitely a very useful way of getting some extra points at the end of the game if you have extra resources, but only if you can pay for them. So when you're getting these tiles and collecting them, these map tiles, you're going to want to make sure that you try to keep some of these resources available at the end of the game. So you're already planning ahead and making sure that you'll have these extra resources at the end of the game, so that way you can get all these extra points. Because if you look at it, that's 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 12 extra points at the end of the game if you're able to do that. And another player who wasn't able to do that, maybe not so much. Maybe they won't win because of that. So you never know. And that's how this game works. That's the only time that this works. So normally when you're playing the game and you're taking actions, only the weather is going to affect you. Only the weather, whatever it may be. And of course it's all negative. All of the weather conditions are negative. So it'll definitely make things harder for you in the end. But when you do prepare for the next season, it adds more to the game when you're preparing for the next season. Now, I'm not saying that you don't get to do a lot, but in spring, you don't usually get to do too much when you're preparing for spring, because at most you'll have 1 or 2 green protection cards anyways. Autumn is a different story. You'll probably have 5, 6, 7 green protection cards in your town, possibly, or more than that maybe, even depending on what you were putting in your town. And so you could do a lot during that season preparing for autumn. And obviously summer is you're just drawing 2 meadow cards. So this adds more to the game when you're preparing for the next seasons. You do so much more. So if you ask me, it adds a whole lot more fun to the game when you're preparing for the next season. Because then you get to, take one of these map tiles, you get to discover one of these locations, and some of these discovery points are awesome. Especially the ones with the meeples are really cool. So, and we'll go over those in another video, or videos. So anyways, thank you guys for watching how to play Everdell Spirecrest, and I'll see you guys in the next video when we go over the weather cards. We'll go over the weather cards next.